Well, hello, sweet friends. I thought I'd come back and tell you the story of me losing my father 7 years ago. This will be a hard story for me to tell because my father and I were like this, tremendously, very close, probably too close. There were no boundaries between him and I. In another video I showed, and I talked about emotional incest. That's not sexual incest, but I had emotional incest undone to me by my mother and my father. That does not make me love them less. Let me kind of try to explain why even though a lot of damage was done to me emotionally, the way they did it was not the way a lot of kids are abused. I was my father's everything. I was my father's little princess. I was my father's son that he never had. You see, my parents had had 2 children already. So when I was born, I had a sister 9 years older than me and a sister 7 years older than me. And my father was praying for that little boy. He wanted a son so bad he could taste it because he loved to fish and hunt, and it would have just been perfect if he had that son. But nope. No, 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 no. 7 years later, he has another little girl. My dad had his own language. So he didn't call me a little girl. He said, "Here we go, another little grill, little grill." So when I was born, that's what happened. I felt, now that I look back, when I talk to my sisters, I feel sorry for them because of the way that I was treated different than them. My oldest sister was always treated like a complete adult all her life. She never had a childhood. My dad took her to have coffee with him and sat there and talked about adult issues always with her. And it's really sad when my sister and I get together because we talk about these things that occurred then. But here's what I say. They didn't know nothing different. My dad was born in 1924. My mother in 1927. My dad was one of 5 children. They had nothing. They had nothing. They were the poorest of poor. Now that he's passed, there's a lot of things that my dad didn't tell me, but a cousin of his says that they probably moved sometimes 14 to 15 times within 3 years. That's just horrible. And my father would say that, there was just cracks in the floors where he lived. And in the winter, they just about froze. So you think about life or what you have now and what it was back then. So let me just get on with this story. My mother had passed in 2008, and I talked about that in another video, and I'll try to tag it in this video so you can go to that video. So after my mother passed, my father pretty much, now I knew this was going on, but I just didn't have the strength in me, even though my father and I would fight, because once I learned within myself through therapy that I had to stand up to this man because he didn't know any boundaries whatsoever. If you watch The Young and the Restless, Victor is the top kahuna of the whole family. Well, that's how my dad was within our family. When he walked in a room, there was a presence about him. And if you see in my living room, there's a big painting of my dad in my living room. Well, that very painting used to be over his fireplace. So, you know, a lot of times in here we talk about narcissistic behavior. Well, I'm sure that my father was a narcissist. And I'm sure, and I hate to say this, in some ways, I have those traits in me. But when I say I have some of those traits, I also have a lot of empathy and love for other people. So I can't say I'm a complete narcissist, but I don't know. I just know that my husband says all the time, you are your dad. You are your dad through and through. You act just like him, especially when we get in fights. That's the first thing Big Show will go for. You act just like him. And even though my husband loved my father with all his heart, there's things about my dad that were just too over the top bearing. Like when Big Show and I got married, my father was jealous of my husband. That's not normal. Yes, my husband was jealous of him. Not when it came to financial areas, because my father exceeded. For somebody that came from nothing, my father exceeded everything that he ever wanted to do, career-wise, financially. The man just excelled and soared. But he was jealous because he lost his everything. Now somebody else was with his everything. You see what I'm saying? My dad never wanted, when I got married at 19 the first time, I was running. I was running. I wanted to get away from these two people, even though I loved them so much. Please try to understand this. But they were like helicopter parents. They didn't want to let me develop my own personality and be my own person. And so that marriage failed. And oh, you ought to see my dad. Oh, he was so happy because here comes little Lolita, broken, and she had nothing, and she was ruined after that first marriage. And oh, she needed the king that my father thought he was. She needed him so much, and she moves back home broken. Even though I had a good job and career, I was still financially ruined. I mean, I had so many debts, and so the best thing I could do at that time was move back home. And I would move in and out. I would stay with them for a while, then I'd get my wings and fly. And then if I felt broken again, I'd run back to mom and daddy. Just telling you the way it was. And of course, I'm going to call it, my dad's name was Richard, but I called him Richardo just to be funny, or Old Man Moses. And because when I was born, my dad was close to 40 years old. So I always seen both of my parents as elderly. Honestly, my mom was, well, daddy was 37 and mama was 34 when I was born. But by the time I'm 10 years old, they both had gray hair, and I just seen them as old. And so let's fast forward, get to, my mother passes, and then my dad, oh boy, he really becomes overbearing. And thank God my husband was still working. So you just hold right there, and I'll be right back because I need some tea. Alrighty, forgive me. I am back. Let me get some tea. My throat's dry. Best tea in the world. Gold Peak Diet. Get a little bit more. Okay. After my mama passed, and I'd taken care of her for 10 years. It was 4 years after my mama passed that my dad called the house at 10 o'clock at night. And he would call and do, you got to think, let's see. He was 87 at this time. Sharp as a whip in the mine. He was on the money. But he calls at 10 o'clock at night. I'm asleep already. And he tells my husband, please come over. My stomach is hurting me so bad. I'm in chronic pain. Please come over and take me to the hospital. So my husband, and he says, do not tell Lolita anything. Don't tell her nothing. I don't want her worrying. Please just come over and get me to the hospital. So my husband rushes over there, and being the control freak that my daddy is, he just says, Big Show, have a seat and just talk with me. Maybe I can get my mind off this pain. And my husband at that point doesn't even know what to do or think, because my dad, whatever is going on, he's going to control it. Even if he says one thing and you get there about going to the hospital, he just will control everything. And my husband didn't know what to think whatsoever. And so time goes by a little bit, and finally he says, I'm sleepy. I think I'm just going to go crawl in the bed. Thank you for coming over. This is an hour later. Big Show's thinking, I don't know what to do with this man. And he knew that I constantly didn't know what to do with my dad, because he would do all kinds of things to me at the end of his life. It's over the top. I'm going to try to get into all this. So Big Show comes home next morning. He has to go to work, but he says, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but your dad called me late last night and was begging me to go to the hospital. And then after I get over there, he changes his tune and says, I think I feel better. So I didn't know what to think. I knew that my father looked like he was losing weight. And I go over there that Sunday and I'm talking to him. I said, did you have a good breakfast? And he said, oh, yeah, I fixed me an egg and a few pieces of bacon. And I said, I don't bring up about my husband being over there because I'd make him mad. I'm not supposed to know nothing. So I said, Daddy, I noticed you've been losing weight. He said, yeah, you would too. When you get old, you're not as hungry. You don't, he goes, I eat a good breakfast. That holds me. And then I just eat peanut butter and crackers at night. I said, it doesn't have to be that way. You know that I'll come over here and fix you anything you want, fix all your favorites, your chicken and dumplings. I know how to make good pizzas. I will grill on the grill. Whatever you want, I will do, and I will take care of it. And he says, I know that, baby. But you just got to see someday when you're 87 years old, you're not going to be as hungry. And you just eat light meals, and that's the way I like it. And when my daddy says something, that's the way it is. You do not do anything different. You do what he says. It's his way or the highway. And that's what my husband says, that I am, just the same way. I guess the apple don't fall far from the tree. So I sit there and think and think and think, and I'm trying not to say too much because he'll get really, my dad can go from 0 to 100 in anger sometimes. So I said, Daddy, I know recently you had all your uppers pulled out, and you've got your temporary false teeth. Do you think that could be causing you not to be have an appetite? Because you're not eating like you used to. He's just looking at me weird. And then I go in the kitchen. He didn't have his teeth in. I go in the kitchen, and I see his teeth in this bowl, and I see, like, I didn't know, like foam around it. So I go in there and I said, what are you washing your teeth in? And he said, I'm doing what the dentist said. The dentist said to put it in Dawn dishwashing detergent. I freak out. I said, well, I don't think that's a good idea. I hope you're rinsing them real, real well, because I think that could be making you sick on your stomach. And he looks at me, because we always fought about everything practically. He looks at me, I'm not. And he's real angry then. I mean, 0 to 100. I ain't stupid, Lolita. I rinsed them real well before I put them in my mouth. I can't even believe you would say something like that. Well, that was that. So time goes on, and he starts getting weaker and weaker. And I can see that, I thought, okay, I go over here every day, but I can tell he's losing weight rapidly. So I said, Daddy, it's time for you to make an appointment with your endocrinologist. And I think we need to have some CAT scans run. You're always talking about your stomach is hurting you, and we need to see what's going on. So I take him to the endocrinologist. These things have been done, what I requested, and we go to the doctor's office for the test results. And I even had a nickname for my dad, Papacita. We're sitting side by side, and we've known this doctor for 30-something years. And after he gives me the results, I am angry. I am one pissed off woman, because this endocrinologist knows what my father's mother died of. And for him not to have watched for this, I was so mad at him. So we're sitting there, and I said, what is the results? And this doctor's passed, so I'm just going to say his name, Dr. Wargle, here in Shreveport. He was a well-known doctor. I'm sure a good doctor. He was my dad's doctor forever, but I think he dropped the ball. Dropped the ball on this one, and many doctors do. And he goes, and he acted really strange. He was, well, and he kept looking around. And I said, well, what, Dr. Wargle? What? You know the results? Shoot, tell us what it is. And my father said, come on, no beating around the bush, Dr. Wargle. Tell us what it is. And he goes, well, you've got a tennis ball-sized tumor on your pancreas. Tennis ball, y'all? Tennis ball? We're looking at about this size. And he's not saying cancer. And by that time, my dad's super, super weak. I mean, barely can walk in. He barely could walk without me holding on to him into that office. And he's really, really, really over the top stubborn, my dad. And I told him before we went, I said, you need to use Mama's old walker to steady yourself. And I said, I've got a wheelchair from when Mama passed that we used. We had 2 or 3. I still held on to him. I said, let me help you like that. No, my dad's too stubborn. So he's going every direction, and I'm holding on him strong as I can. And here I am, just 140 40-pound woman trying to make sure that this man that's 6'2" that used to weigh, I'd say a good 220, and he was probably down, I bet, probably 160. So I'm trying to steady him. So here this doctor says, you know, but he won't say cancer. He won't say the words. It's very bizarre, and he knows what my father really has. He knows that he has pancreatic cancer, and he knows that it's stage 4, but he could not. I'm just going, ooh, because I'm angry. I'm angry. I'm still angry. He didn't have the balls to say the truth. So I said, you get on that phone now, and you call the best doctors that can handle this tumor you're talking about, and get my father. He's not going home. He's not going home. He's going straight to the hospital. He's going straight to the hospital, Dr. Wargle. He is not going home. So that's exactly what he did. We sat right in front of him. He got on the phone, made phone calls, and then I said, and you give me that file. He said, well, yes, I'm going to give it to you, because you're going to have to go over there to the hospital and hand it to the doctor that I have contacted to handle this, handle your father's care from here on out. I said, okay, good. Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate it very much. So I get my father out in the car. I drive over to the hospital because it's right over there from his Dr. Wargle's office. I get my father all set up and everything. I walk out from I said, Daddy, excuse me just a minute. I walk out because I'm going to find out. And I open up that file on my father, and there it is. But the doctor couldn't tell my father eye to eye, man to man. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. And I was mad. I was mad. I was so mad. Because all this could have been avoided. All this could have been avoided. That doctor knew my father's background. My daddy trusted him. My daddy was his patient for all those years. All those years, my daddy would buddy up with him. Thought he was his friend. And the man dropped the ball. You got to be careful, y'all. You got to be careful with these doctors. You've got to be your own advocate strongly with these doctors. Oh, man. So then I put him in the hospital under this oncologist. And the oncologist sees that this man, my daddy, had the best insurance on both sides. The best. So what does this doctor do? I am in knee deep of taking care of all my dad's animals. All his hunting dogs. 4, might have been 5 dogs. And my dad being a control freak, telling me, go easy on these people. Okay. Stage 4. Once they hit my dad with that poison, my dad probably could have lived if they would have put him on the Marinol. That's the pill form of marijuana, medical marijuana, to help him not hurt so bad in his stomach. This doctor seen the narrows. I'm gonna make money off this man. He's about, when they hit him with the poison so hard, the chemo, he just went downhill. From the time that we got this diagnosis, March 23rd of 2012 to April 12th, that's only 3 weeks, my father passed. My best friend was taken from me. So he stayed in the hospital, and I got him out of the hospital, and I brought him home for about a week. Not even a week, because he was getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And I begged my sister, I said, get up here. I can't handle this. I can't handle. I'm awake 24/7. I'm running on empty. So my sister drove with my niece from Florida and got up to Louisiana as fast as they could. She could have flown. I didn't understand why she drove. I was really angry at every situation. So finally she got to my dad's house about midnight. And I was on empty. I said, here, take over. I gotta go. I need to go home. I need some space. I need to think. I need to clear all the cobwebs out of my head. I can't handle this no more. Thank you for coming. I gotta go. So I went home until the next day. And I go over there. And we're trying to line up stuff. Because my dad is trying to handle, tell us all what's going to happen, tell us all what to do. And I'm saying, Daddy, you're thinking this neighbor lady knows somebody that can come in here and give you your care until you pass. Because we're looking at end days, Father. And he doesn't want to hear that. He just wants to stay there at his house. And he was wanting these people to come in and take care of him that weren't even certified nurse assistants, no CNA. They were just, I wasn't about to pay people that could not take care of him in the manner that he needed to be taken care of. So finally, I convinced my dad to go into the Veterans Nursing Home in Shreveport. No, it's in Bossier City, sorry. It's not far down from my house on Arthur Teague. So we get my dad in there, and 3 days later, he's mad. He's calling me. And he's calling me every day. I went to see him all the time. But he called me and he said, if you don't get me out of here, I'm breaking out of here. Imagine that. But I know he's serious because he had a real close friend and they were in cahoots about anything. And if you don't think he wouldn't have done it, he would have done it. His friend would have drove him back to his old house or drove him to my house. And I physically could not take care of my dad. I did it for my mom. I know my dad was my best friend, but physically I was not strong enough to, lift him up and out of the bed and onto the potty and all those things. I just could not do it. Plus, I just had a knee replacement a few months prior. I was not physically able to do it. And I cry to this day because I wish I could have done everything. I beat myself up to this day because I wish I could have done everything, but I couldn't. So after that phone call, that tore me up. He hated that place. He told me it would give him flashbacks from when he was in the war. He didn't want to be around no veterans. He just, even though, he was proud to be a veteran, he just did not want to be there. So my husband, as y'all know in Big Show, I cannot thank him enough for what he done. Big Show and my niece scrambled and got all the medical paperwork they needed to do and got it in contact with the Grace Home in Shreveport. The Grace Home is an in-home hospice home. So I met with this wonderful, wonderful lady. Oh God, y'all, this is hard. I met with this wonderful lady. I wish I could even remember her first name. I can see her now still. She had really short hair. She was so loving. Handpicked to be the executive director of the Grace Home. Handpicked by God. So she meets me at the Veterans Home. And she and I sit together. And I tell her, I said, please, please, don't let my father die here. Please let him have dignity and love and hope and grace at the Grace Home. I want him to be there. I want him to have a big, beautiful room. And she said, I have the perfect room for your daddy. I just beamed and I had hope. I said, thank you. She said, we're going to move your daddy today. And she said, it has a beautiful view. She said, you told me earlier that your father liked to squirrel hunt. And he won't be able to hunt, but he will get to see the beautiful birds and the squirrels right outside his window eating bird seed and sunflower seeds that we put out. So she came through. He was moved to the Grace Home. Let me get a drink. That afternoon. So, oh man, I'm going to get this picture right here and show you my sweet daddy at the Grace Home. Oh man, it's hard to see. Maybe if I put my hands behind it. Yeah. There's my daddy on the left. And he's smiling. And there's Marlene that lived 2 houses down from my daddy. And to tell you the truth, my daddy had his eyes on her. He did. And Marlene was a beautiful, beautiful woman. Her daddy's 87. I think Marlene was probably 70 there. But she was such a good friend to my daddy because he only lived at that house for a year. So let me put that picture back up. So that was Daddy at the Grace Home. So once we got him there, he perked up. Even though he didn't feel so good, he perked up because he was at a better place and he had me just where he wanted me. See, if I'm 60, I was 53 when he passed. So I would sleep on this couch that opened up, and I would sleep on it, and he and I would talk to midnight, and I call it, he and I are burning the midnight oil. We talk, and we talk, and we talk. And my daddy was one that didn't like to take drugs, any kind of medication. But I knew because I talked to the oncologist there that they were giving him Miranol so his stomach wouldn't hurt so bad. And one night, my dad said, I can't sleep, baby. I can't sleep, and I need to sleep. And I said, well, Daddy, I know you don't like to take pills. Do you want to take something that I take to help me sleep? And he said, yeah, baby, whatever it is, I trust you, baby. Give me whatever you got. So I dug down in my pill bottle and I gave him one of my Xanaxes. And before I knew it, he was snoring. I was happy. So my daddy only lived a week more in the Grace home. He only had 7 days there. But let me tell you something. The Grace home made it worthwhile. I'll never forget the beauty and the best treatment ever at the Grace home. Because churches in Shreveport brought the best food every day to feed us, all of us, all 12 families that was there. They treated us with respect, and I've never felt the love by the volunteers. It was amazing. And also, I'll never forget, I was there one morning early because Easter was coming, and one of the CNAs came into my daddy's room, and she knew a lot about him because she took time and asked him questions. So she came in dressed like the Easter bunny. She sure did. And she knew my daddy loved Hank Williams. Many of you probably don't know who Hank Williams is. Hank Williams Jr. And Hank Williams Jr. did not have a long life. He died at 29. So just Google him. Country western singer. So she comes in dressed like the Easter bunny. And she starts singing to my daddy. Hey, hey, good looking. What you got cooking? And she just sang that song to him. And me and my daddy just grinned. Here's my daddy, weak as ever. Knowing that he's dying. But he's being so loving and caring to others. And thanking the Easter Bunny for coming to see him. So she leaves. And the sad thing is, in this story, let me get a drink. Sinuses are getting me. Is Thursday night, we were all talking, Daddy, me, and my husband. Well, prior, my dad and me are talking, not my husband. And he says, call Big Show. And before he gets up here, tell him to bring me a Coke. And I said, well, I know we got some Coke Zeros at home. My daddy's really smart. He said, no, I want a 16-ounce real Coke. Okay, think about this. They have not given my daddy any insulin. My daddy has not ate hardly a thing. Nothing hardly in weeks. And he's very weak, but he says, I want that Coke. Okay, you think about this. He knew what he was doing. He knew that when he drank that Coke, that it was going to spike his insulin very high. I mean, he knew that he was going to a sugar coma. I wasn't thinking about that. I wasn't thinking about anything. I was just thankful that the man wanted something, because I'd begged him. I'd say, Daddy, I'll make your favorite chicken and dumplings. Oh, baby, I'll eat that tomorrow. He always had an answer for something. So Big Show gets there. He drinks that Coke. I've never seen somebody drink something so fast. Oh, he wanted that Coke. Now, prior to that incident, him being on Marinol, he would do some really crazy things during the day, but we would just let him do what he wanted to. I mean, sometimes you'd come in to the room, like I would step out, go eat, and then I'd come back, and my daddy would be going like this. He was fishing. And I'd say, what you doing, Daddy? And he would be like this, because he was very weak. He'd go, bring me that net. And I would just pretend and bring him something. And then he goes, get the bucket, I got another one. Pretend like I had a bucket. And then he goes, we're having a fish fry tomorrow. I say, okay, we're having a fish fry tomorrow. I'd get all excited. I'd say, okay, that way you'll eat good. He goes, yep, I will. And he'd always keep his eyes closed, and he had his, like a hunting hat on, because that's what he wanted. And sometimes he'd say, give me my shades, my eyes are hurting. Whatever he said, we did. So that all went on for a week. But that night, Thursday night, after Jim gave him that real, Big Show gave him that real Coke, something just changed. And that night, I was really tired. So my sister came in from East Texas, and she said, don't worry, I've got this. I'll take care of Papa. I'm spending the night, and I'll be with him. Now, my sister and I weren't real close. We'd had a lot of discord. So a lot of things happened that night. She never called me. I'm being real, as tired as I was. Friday, I decided I'm going to do something for me. I'm going to go buy a bunch of really pretty pansy flowers. I'm going to plant these. And I just got in my own little world Friday. Well, like I said, Thursday night, all kinds of things went awry. But my sister never called me Friday. Everybody's trying to protect Lolita from the inevitable. Even my husband didn't tell me. He snuck off, went up there at 10 o'clock in the morning, come back, didn't tell me a thing. Didn't tell me my dad's laying there, glassy-eyed, mouth hanging to the left, not recognizing our pastor, not recognizing anybody, not talking to anybody. Death is near. It's going to happen. It's going to happen soon. But nobody's telling Lolita. Nobody's going to tell Lolita nothing. So that day, I didn't go up to the Grace home. I'd kissed my daddy the night before on the forehead, told him how much I loved him, and I left. Yep, that was the last time I seen my daddy talking. alive. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle it, y'all. Couldn't handle it. Couldn't be there like I was there for my mama to the end. So that day about 4 o'clock, prior to 4 o'clock, about 3:30 my time, my husband said, I'm going to Brookshire's, and Brookshire's is a block from my house. He says, I'm going to go get some things that we need in the house, and I'll be back real quick. Big Show don't come back home real quick. And I know my husband. So I called Grace home. And my sister answers the phone and she's crying. And she can't hardly talk. And I say, Mary, what's going on? Mary, talk to me. She said, Sis, Daddy died. Daddy's passed. Daddy's with Mama. I said, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you call me earlier today? Why didn't you call me? Why didn't you call me, sis? She never answered me. She just kept crying herself. She said, Big Show's on his way home. He's been here. He's with me. Daddy had passed a few minutes before he walked in. I was so upset that nobody told me. Nobody told me. Then Big Show walked in the door at my house. I went off. I just went crazy. And he grabbed me and held me tight and he said, this is exactly why you shouldn't have been there, because you would have went off and you would have climbed the walls. Because you would have wanted to save him. Honey, you couldn't save him from this. You couldn't save him. It's the circle of life. It was time. And God protected you. And God protected him because you didn't need to be there. Because this is exactly what would have happened. I never got to see him. I seen him the day before. On the money, mentally. Still trying to protect Lolita. Lolita's 53. My father never saw me as an adult, ever. Till the day he died, I had a nickname. He called me Tiny. I'll always be Tiny to him. It is so hard to lose a parent. You feel like an orphan in your adult life. But I can do this much. I can still do family traditions no matter what. I cook just like my daddy. Just like my daddy. And I cook like my mama in many ways too. Because my daddy and my mama were as one. And they taught each other how to cook. I don't cook anything hardly by a recipe. Everything, if I make gravy, I can't tell you how much flour I put in there. Everything's by taste and by tradition. And I've done it so many times that I just do. So this is my story. Y'all, you gotta be a big advocate for your family members. I had to fight so many different doctors for my mother. I had to stand up for her, rise up strong. Do not let doctors dictate to you. If any doctor acts holier than thou, which I had many, heart specialists, this and that about my mother, and they would be so cocky. And I would just say, if we were in a hospital setting, I'd say, would you step out with me, sir, please? Because I would never act up in front of my mother to hurt her or scare her in any way. But I'd never let any doctor be condescending to me or anybody in my family. I'm that strong. My father taught me well to never let anybody put you down or push you or tell you how something's going to be, because you, my friend, I'm going to tell you right now, you hold the cards and you are the one that's in. Let me tell you something. I, if I go to a doctor and they make me wait for 2 hours to see them, they hear from me. When I get in there, they hear from me. And then most of the time I change doctors. I'm not going to have somebody, when my insurance, I pay a lot for my insurance and they pay them very well. And you're going to treat me with respect, because I will treat you with respect. But the loss of my father, even though he had lived a very good life to 87 years old, he was a very active man. He, even up to 3 or 4 weeks before he passed, was still driving. Plus, he loved to walk the park, and he would pull out a 3 to 5 mile every day. So, if pancreatic cancer runs in your family, make sure you're being checked for that. I see my oncologist, I think early December, I can't remember. And I still have to be checked for the BRCA2 mutation. My oldest sister has it. What that means, that you are more likely to develop, I had breast cancer of the left breast, you're more likely to have another cancer pop up in your body, be it pancreatic, be it any type of cancer. So I'm praying that I do not have the mutation. My niece of my sister has already been checked. She does not have it. But we're all going to die someday. We're going to die of something. Something's going to get us, be it a health issue, be it, like I said, in my mother's, a car wreck, an accident. We could die just in our sleep. I have severe sleep apnea. I hate to wear my mask that I'm supposed to, my CPAP machine. I don't wear it. Most of the time I haven't wore it in a month probably. I could die in my sleep. Who knows? My mother had severe enlarged congestive heart failure at the end of her life. Who knows? We all don't know. It's the circle of life. It's the circle of life. But one thing I know, and then I'm going to stop this video. One thing I know, that whatever happens to me is a win-win. And you hear that good. And you think about that. What I'm telling you. It's a win-win with me. You know why? Because I believe. I have faith. I believe in King Jesus, my Lord and Savior. I believe that there is eternal life waiting for me. I believe that I will see my mom and dad again. I believe. So let me tell you one more thing before I go. Before my father died, because my sister was there, remember I left. God spared because he knew I could not handle to be there and watch my father pass. But my sister said in that room, and I remember there was a nice skylight right over my dad. She said it was a bright moonlit night. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, my dad woke up from a deep sleep. And he was pulling at the rails of the bed. Because, you know, it's a hospital bed and they have the rails up. And he never called my sister Mary. He would call her Merjane. Merjane. And her name was Mary Jane. He would, Merjane, Merjane. And she goes, and we always all felt like we was little bitty because the emotional incest was done to all of us. And she goes, and my sister, let's see, if I was 53, she was 60. She goes, what daddy, what daddy? And then real time, she talked, and to this day she talks real tiny. What daddy, what daddy? Get me out of this bed, Merjane, get me out of this bed. She said, I can't, daddy. Get my clothes, Merjane. I can't, daddy. They're washing them right now. Oh, okay. So then he lays there and he starts seeing my mother and he's reaching out and he describes my mother like my mother looked when my mother was young. He goes, oh, baby. Oh. And he's reaching out and he's calling out and he's going, Mama, Mama, Mama. Look at you. Your beautiful brunette hair. And he's just talking up a storm to Mama. And then he's seeing his mother. And he's talking to all these family members. And he's just rapidly, my sister said he's talking 90 to nothing. And he's just seeing, and then he starts praising the Lord. Oh, Jesus. Oh, King Jesus. And all this stuff is coming out of my dad. My sister is like, she said, looking up at him like a deer in headlights. I mean, she can't even believe her eyes. So, I don't know if you've ever seen anybody pass, but my mother did the same thing before she passed. So, I believe my father was seeing his family. And I believe that he's seen King Jesus just before he passed or went into that coma. Because after that, my sister said he got quiet. And then, like I told you, Big Show went up there about 10 o'clock. Didn't even tell me. Said his eyes were all glassy. He didn't recognize anybody. My pastor came up, loved on him. Said, I'll be back. Be back to see you, bud. Hang in there, bud. We love you, bud. Prayed over my daddy. I've told y'all before that my daddy was well known at my church. I myself been going to the same church 40 years. They called my daddy a whale at that church. And you know, at casinos, what a whale is. That's somebody that really comes for the church and comes for anybody in need. My daddy came for so many people in Louisiana or anywhere we lived. I can tell you another story, and then I promise you I will end this broadcast. When we lived in the Philippine Islands, we had a maid that lived with us. And our maid had 8 children. She was 40 years old. We had never had a maid in our house, ever. We really didn't want any. We didn't really want one. But that was custom when you lived in the Philippines, that you had a maid that lived with you. You had a sew girl that's, if you wanted nice dresses made. Um, Everything was very cheap over there. So we had a big home, and there was an area that was custom for the maid area where she lived right off the kitchen. So we had this maid. We couldn't say her real name, so we called her Dolly. And she wanted to be called Dolly. And she and I became this close. I loved my Dolly. And she could cook the best chicken adobo and all. We just loved Filipino food. I'd lived in Hawaii for 5 years, so Polynesian and Asian food was just custom to our family. So the big story about Dolly is after we left, my dad took care of Dolly for, I talked to her. Let's see. So if we lived in the Philippines in 1977, I talked to her in 2010, I think, 2 years before my dad passed. I got a hold of her. Well, I sent a letter to where she lived, and then she called me and said she had moved from the Philippines to Hawaii because one of her daughters married a man that was in the service, so she lived there now. So we're talking on the phone, and I don't know a lot of stuff. And she said, "Tell your daddy, thank you for all the years, for 30-something years, that he took care of me and my family." I said, "Really, Dolly?" I said, how did he take care of you all?" And she said, "Financially. He kept me on a payroll." She said, and that what he paid me when I worked for y'all, he increased yearly. And I just was in awe. I said, "Well, I know my daddy's a good man, and I'm so proud to know and humbled that he took care of you and your family for all those years." And she said, "Yeah." She said, "You know, after you all left, I was in my early 40s, and I was tired of working for all these, I loved the Americans, but I was tired. I wanted to be with my family." And she said, "I told your daddy this. I want to go back to the barrios. I want to be with my children." And she said, "If it wasn't for your daddy, I could have never had that be granted." So, y'all, that's what kind of man my daddy was. He might have been a control freak with me and did some heavy duty emotional incest to me, which he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know he was causing damage by controlling everything about me. He didn't know that. And I forgive him. I forgive him. I've had a good life. I'm still having a good life. I might have my days that I get down and miss them so much. But life goes on, and you create other good things in life. Be thankful. Like I'm thankful today. It's almost 2 o'clock. We're gearing up for a big LSU game tonight. Life's good, y'all. Love your life. Be thankful. And I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.